But of course, January 31st, Winters Jazz Club, Jazz Showcase February 12th. You've got plenty of opportunities to go check this out. And I mean, hopefully, talking to Marlene, you guys have seen her play, but now you know the fascinating story behind Marlene. And you can go in, and if you have a clarinet, I'm sure she'll be happy to talk to you about that too. I'm just... Hey everybody, it's Mike Jeffers, ChicagoJazz.com, Chicago Jazz Magazine. Welcome to Talking Jazz with Mike Jeffers. We are here at Johnny O's, episode 121. I am here with the great bassist, Marlene Rosenberg. She made it down here to Johnny O's. She's thoroughly impressed with the atmosphere.
Absolutely,
I can already tell.
Yes.
Actually, we both probably played in some places that were
similar.
Not as impressive.
No, not at all as impressive. Right?
So I wanted to have you on because you're obviously, you're one of the top bass players in the country. So that's one thing. But you also are locally here in Chicago,
correct,
which I want to make sure everyone knows about. And you have a very interesting show coming up January 31st at Winters Jazz Club. It's a tribute to Bill Evans.
Right.
Now, did you ever play with Bill Evans or did you meet him?
Never met him. I did see him at Rick's Cafe.
Okay.
When it was in the W Hotel, whatever they called it back then.
Yeah, well, because I know I run into different people that either hung with him sometimes, or they played with him, or they just randomly had an encounter with him some random place or something, because he seemed like a real personable guy at some points. So Tom Mueller on piano, and everybody will remember Tom Mueller from episode 100. He cooked sausages in the back.
Yeah, I'm making this Polish sausage for Eric Schneider. It's been marinated in Malort. The onions have been marinated in Malort as well.
And then, Rodrigo
Can't compete with that.
Rodrigo Villanueva.
Villanueva?
That's what I said,
Villanueva?
Right? Yes.
Yes.
What
that's
she
exactly.
said. I apologize, Rodrigo. It's very early again. He's playing drums. It's going to be a killer group. How did you come up with a tribute to Bill Evans? I mean, the obvious opportunity, but you're a bass player, right? So was it Eddie Gomez? Was it Mark Johnson kind of inspired, or was it just the music?
I figured, who would know Scott LaFaro or Eddie Gomez, a tribute, and they go, who? So Bill Evans, and plus, my guy Stan, he had an idea. We're thinking theme. A lot of people like the theme idea in the clubs these days. And Bill Evans, when I was in school learning the bass at U of I, my two favorite albums that I wore out was Live at the Village Vanguard, or Sunday Live at the Village Vanguard, and Ray Brown, and This One's for Blanton with Duke Ellington and Ray Brown. So those two, and Bill and Scott LaFaro has always been a favorite of mine, and so I thought, and Bill Evans is amazing. And now comes out, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
The video Time Remembered.
Yep.
And it just seemed like, this is great. I love his music.
Well, I think you're right with the theme thing too, right? Because as to think about it, what, Bill Evans died how many years ago? 30 years ago, maybe? Is that about where we're at now with that? Which is amazing, but people still transcribe all of his tunes, are constantly learning and all that. But also, to me, that group, those different trios that he had with the different rhythm sections, it flowed so well with his playing. And is that something that as a bassist, you've got to sit there and listen to this, and I don't hear any other groups ever sound like that, the fluidity and how they're doing it, because it's not, there's straight ahead stuff in there, but there's so much fluidity inside, and they're all talking to each other within the context of the tune.
Correct.
Do you think that's kind of like because of the way Bill played and everybody had to work towards it?
Yeah, that's kind of he was one of the, musicians that set that kind of contrapuntal flow of conversation between the two that flowed a lot more. It took some of the roles and, reduced those boundaries of bass, do this, and so, he hired Eddie Gomez. Scott LaFaro was also, innovative in that way, having that kind of conversation.
Yeah.
So we have Scott LaFaro, Eddie Gomez, Mark Johnson. I heard all those trios, just amazing.
Yeah.
I'm so happy I got to see him live right before maybe he passed here in Chicago.
Yeah.
And yeah.
The thing that I always am fascinated about because there's only certain artists that have done this to me. You tell me if I'm wrong because you're way more knowledgeable than me. I'm just a drummer within a hot dog stand here.
No.
but
referring to the old joke, huh?
but you know, like, so Bill Evans, let's just take it right. He was on the Kind of Blue album,
correct?
Right, and his playing is a certain way that way. To
Right.
me, and then it keeps evolving and evolving and evolving and
definitely.
turns into what it is. It's so fascinating to me because, you know, some players, that's the way they sound. That's where they've sounded for 30 years. It's great. It's awesome. It's swinging. But there's only a handful of players that, to me, really, completely transform the way they play, and just continuously drive the creativity flow of it. I mean, is that what you hear in his playing?
Oh yeah, he really did have that palette set, which is what I think Miles loved about him, is the contrast to what had gone before. He wanted something different, and they took it modal.
Right.
And then Bill just, you know, kept writing and listening and practicing, and it flowed into this whole other thing in his groups.
Right.
You know, which is part of the transformation.
So now, getting ready for this show, you've got 2 sets you have to worry about. There's a
Right.
lot of music to choose from.
Exactly.
Number one. Number two, there's a lot of interesting arrangements, even if you're playing like on Green Dolphin Street, which is a standard.
Correct.
Bill Evans didn't exactly play it like we would do it at a jam session.
No.
So,
Thankfully.
yeah, right. So how did the process go about picking out some of this repertoire and starting to put it? You're probably in the process of putting it together right now, but
yeah. Honestly, putting it together right now. Last night, even, you know, like, what should I do? And I'm looking through the tunes, and it has to do with who's playing too. Since I'm the bass player and not playing the piano,
Right.
You know, so I defer to Tom Mueller, who's done a lot of study on Bill Evans.
that's
So
one of his favorite guys is Bill Evans.
Absolutely. So we're you know, conferring, you know, commiserating, all the C words, and on what tunes we'll play.
Okay.
You know, so there'll be some standards, and of course, Bill's tunes.
Right.
You know, and then there's the video time remembered. We might even learn a new tune. We'll see. But
Well,
we want to feel comfortable, and we want to present something great for our audience. that's gonna come.
How hard is it for you? I mean, are you going to think of this as you playing, or are you going to kind of think of yourself, putting yourself in the Scott LaFaro, Mark Johnson, Eddie Gomez kind of thing? I mean, because your style lends itself to so many different styles. I mean, trying to get your brain around what's happening probably on the tunes that you're playing it's probably fun too, right?
Oh, very fun. Actually, I love playing that way, very contrapuntally, and probably I get in trouble in certain bands because I do it.
Yeah.
Don't do it. Play the quarter note and stay there. You know, but this will be fun for me because, like I said, Scott LaFaro is one of my all-time favorites. Eddie, Mark Johnson, you know, I'm going to try and channel them. I can only be me, so, you know, I might, you know, gone astray from the path a little bit, but, you know.
Was Scott LaFaro obviously was a huge influence on you. How did you end up getting into bass? I mean, being an upright bassist, because I'm sure that there weren't all that many women bass players when you were coming up in high school. Were you starting in high school?
Well, actually, the surprising part of the story is that I was a clarinet player, and my major at college was clarinet.
That was clarinet,
so, yeah,
really?
So I didn't tell you that before the interview, so I put a little surprise on
Hey,
you.
it's all right.
But yeah, when I got to the last year of high school, they needed a bass player, and I thought, well, I could do that. I really wanted to play jazz saxophone, and he put me in the second band for that, in the first band, because he really needed a bass player. And
why did you think you could? I mean, you just
I
felt
didn't
like
think
that was
I could play.
Did you think it was cool looking or something? I mean,
not
was
at
it
all.
any-
I just wanted to play jazz, and he needed a bass player, and so I was on electric, and I had to write the letters above the notes because I didn't read bass clef. I read treble
bass
clef
clef,
like
yeah.
crazy because I went to Illinois State, all the different competitions as a clarinetist.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, I got into U of I as a clarinet major. Blah blah blah.
That's
and
amazing.
And then I went and I was like the lizard of bass at University of Illinois. Everybody saw me and, oh, here she comes, run, you know. And I got in by the skin of my teeth to the sixth band
Really?
Yeah, by the grace of people that were, doing the audition.
And are you doing like classical saxophone and clarinet, or are you
Classical clarinet.
Yeah. So that's how you got in, and then you're getting into the jazz thing on the bass side of it, but you weren't exactly a world beater at that point.
No,
so
not at all.
Heading the other direction.
No, they were.
Were you down there with like Joel Spencer and Eric Schneider and
yeah,
I don't know
well,
how long Eric was there,
Joe, like people would come back. It's like the city that nobody could get away from. It's like they would keep coming back. Yeah, it's a vortex. Sucked them right back, and then they'd leave, and they had to come back. And John Campbell. So all these people formed that community.
Okay.
And Joan Hickey. Mm-hmm. We were in the same. Maybe she was a year ahead of me or something. We played together, and it was amazing.
So a lot of your playing, were you taking lessons or were you just learning on your own?
I was taking bass lessons and clarinet at the same time. And then I changed my major, and then I never slept, and I had to make a decision. So I sold my clarinet for the rent. My beautiful buffet clarinet, mouthpiece, and I wish I hadn't, but. Anyway, you do what you got to do.
That's
and
right.
I just focused on bass. I took lessons with that. I applied. I got a scholarship on bass. There was a women's, because I put myself through school.
Yeah.
So,
wow.
And so I went every summer because I kept changing my major from education to applied clarinet and then to jazz bass and composition. Why? Because there was no jazz actual, what do you call it?
Is there a degree? There
no
wasn't
degree,
a degree, right? There wasn't a jazz studies degree, right?
So there was a little asterisk in the bottom of the book, and it said open options. I said, that's me. So I petitioned to get and write my own program, basically, and took a lot of ethnomusicology classes and studied some composition and picked everybody's brain, and there was such a fabulous community. We'd play sessions all the time.
Listening sessions too. You guys
listening
used to listen,
sessions
right?
with groups. Talking about the music. Then we'd play. Then we'd learn tunes. We'd play at Trino's, the big band Garvey. There were 6 big bands there.
That's amazing, isn't it?
Right?
Isn't it? Because it was like North Texas and U of I.
Yeah, that was it in Berkeley.
The 2 big ones in Berkeley.
That was it. But nobody had a jazz.
There's no jazz studies degree.
Jazz studies degree.
Yeah.
So I made up my own.
It's probably better too, because if there was a jazz studies degree, you would have been locked into some curriculum, and at that point, it probably wouldn't have been the curriculum that people do now. So it probably would have been very, focused on something that maybe you're so wide open with your ears at that point that somebody would have said, no, you're going to focus just on this direct line to get out of school.
It could be. It could be.
I think now the jazz studies degrees are probably way more optional, where there's a lot bigger range of things that they're doing and teaching and all that stuff.
Yeah,
but,
depending on the climate of any given school, the nice thing about the academia part is the things that we didn't get, we can put into the curriculum. Hopefully for the students now.
Right.
And the things we did get, we'll try and put into the curriculum, like, you guys should be going out to listen to music, or engaging with the students. Like I went on tour to Mexico with Rodrigo and 2 of our grad students.
Oh.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it gives them insight into what a tour might be like, because those opportunities are falling off in terms of the mentorship of the older cats, and so we're the older cats. Supposedly mentoring. Yeah.
That's unbelievable,
Yeah,
though. I mean, like, when you're in school now, and that's a great point you brought up, like just the tour thing, or just it's like the outside activations that the schools are able to provide. Because, even when I got back into town in the mid-'90s, there was a lot of, everybody was playing, there was a lot of jam sessions, you were doing stuff, and I mean, some of the situations I got myself playing into, I still can't believe I was playing with some of these guys, doing what I was doing. It was no big deal to them. It was a big deal to me.
Of course.
But I learned a lot, even just from showing up and how to get set up and how to do this, how to do that. But those things are falling by the wayside these days. So it's interesting that the schools are able to do that kind of stuff.
Now
so
we have to do that,
Yeah.
because, I mean, if we know, we have to share,
Right.
and that's what we need to engage with them and give them that experience. Mentor them so that they know what to do. Actually set them out there and say, okay, go book it.
Right.
You know, go book the tour and you teach these young people in the high schools or elementary, you know, and put it together.
Yeah.
Take some of the funds from the school. Go out there and do it. And so that they get the experience, so they know how to do that in a professional way. And instead of like getting out of school and not knowing what to do.
Yeah.
You know, so it's good to give them a platform.
Well,
to,
and you know
understanding
this
that.
better than anybody because you've been playing for so long and doing so much stuff. But I mean, when kids get out of school, they have to realize they're suddenly in business for themselves.
Right.
There's no like here's
More
your,
than ever before.
Yeah, here's your $40,000 gig to play jazz bass over here at the club. I mean, it's like
Oh yeah, sure. I'm waiting for that. Oh yeah, that's on page.
Is that
no,
is it coming
it's
up in
not-
July?
Yeah,
No?
it's not in this book. It's not in this date book, but I'm sure it's there.
So do you ever, when it's 20 below zero, miss playing clarinet when you're lugging your bass in? And out
Oh
of
no,
your-
marching band. No, sorry. Yes, I did a ton of marching band.
man.
Yeah, I didn't do the Woody Allen. If you remember Woody Allen
Yeah.
with the cello in the marching band, he's on the chair and he keeps moving it. No, I didn't get to do that, but I did do strolling bass.
Oh well, I think
That's,
they
you
still
know.
do that at some restaurants.
Yes,
I
of
think.
course.
So you're in college and you're getting out. What's your first like breakthrough gig? What's like? All right, cool. This is unbelievable. I finally am I'm playing with somebody that's
It was actually Stan Getz at the Barrington Jazz Festival.
no kidding.
No kidding, yeah.
Wow.
And that's where I met Terry Lynn Carrington, Kenny Barron, and Stan Getz. And I worked on all his music, and I got to play Sippin' at Bells, the melody with him.
Really?
And it was unbelievable. It was so
How
exciting.
old were you? Just out of college?
Pretty much, 25,
Yeah.
26, you know.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was very exciting. Then they called again. Okay, this is like the mistake of my life.
Oh no.
I play the worst jobbing date in the world. I can't even remember. I remember the situation. I remember the scene. I remember it was in some weird park outside.
Outside.
You know, and I turned down. George Mraz could not make a gig, and they called me to play. You know, with it, right? You'd think it was a no-brainer, but I'm a little girl. At that point, I'm lost. Yeah, obviously,
So you
and
played a jobbing
way,
gig.
way too loyal, and I couldn't get a sub for it. I should have just said, "Screw this, I'm going." Duh.
Wow.
Yeah. So, but obviously, maybe he was happy with
Yeah.
my performance.
Yeah.
It
well, it worked out
really
for you in
work-
the end, anyways.
Yeah.
I mean, but
Well,
that's
it isn't over.
There's still time.
There's still time for me to make up for lost time. Yeah. And then the next one was with Joe Henderson.
Okay.
And I think I heard John Whitfield was in New York and people were looking for a female bassist.
Was he in town? Like Joe was in town, like hiring a local thing, or
No,
what was
he
going
was
on?
looking. His promoter was looking for an all-female,
Okay.
and somehow John Whitfield was in New York or something, talking to some people, and he recommended me.
Oh wow. Okay.
And so I get a call, and I'm like, really? Really? Joe, come on.
You said
Really?
I've got a jobbing gig at a
Yeah,
hot dog
no, I
stand."
learned. By then, thankfully. Yeah, I am teachable.
So you flew to New York, or how did that whole thing work out?
Well, I can't remember all the details, but yeah, they sent tickets, and then, I had my bass trunk, and off we went. And we went to Mount Fuji Jazz Festival, which is
So did you have to audition, or did you just get the gig? Like,
Yeah.
okay, here we go.
Really, there were very few lady bass players at that point, back in the dinosaur age.
Sure.
Now it's like there's more of us, that play great.
It wasn't that long ago. It's not
No,
the
it's not.
dinosaur
No,
age.
I know, it's not.
You're not in
You
the
know.
Field Museum or anything.
No.
So you flew out, and that was it. You got the gig, like,
Right.
and you flew
I
out.
was
So
right.
what was the first gig you did? Do you remember with them? Who was in the band?
It might have been. No, I don't think it was. It could have been, Renee Rossness,
Yeah.
Sylvia Cuenca on drums, Joe, myself.
Right.
Cindy Blackman actually was on some gigs too.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we were in Japan, and you can see on not my website, but on my Facebook page.
Okay.
Yeah, there's an old picture of me with my Jew fro, and we all had big hair back then.
Well, you've got the one picture of all of you at the piano, right? I mean, there's
Right,
that one
and then
picture.
Roy.
And Roy.
And that's when Roy actually hired us, Roy Hargrove.
Okay.
And so that was the connection there.
Ah, okay.
And then, which just had an amazing tribute in New York that I went to for him. It was great. I don't know if we were in New York. We played in New York a lot. played in D.C. We did, Blues Alley, the Blue. I don't know. There's a lot of blue.
Right.
In
Blue Whale, Blue Note, Blue this, Blue that.
Right. Well,
yeah.
the Blue Note there, and we were in Seattle. We did San Francisco, Yoshi's.
Did you move to New York at that point?
I didn't really. I was in and out,
Yeah.
just in and out.
Okay.
Like Joe's in and out, like
Yeah.
his album. Now, I finally I get what that means now, Joe.
In and out. Yeah, now I get it too.
You're right.
See, I'm learning here.
I'm going to assume that. It's pretty, yeah.
No, that's
Yeah.
wild. So you just, boom, you're doing that. And then how long were you with Joe?
Had a couple of years,
Yeah.
on and off, yeah.
What was that experience like? Did it just open up your whole playing? Or
Yeah, it was, Joe's was interesting because he never really said much musically about what you should do. He wasn't like controlling, like.
But he
"Don't do
liked what
this."
you were doing, otherwise he wouldn't have had you on the gig, obviously.
Obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah. And occasionally he'd say, I'd like you to do, check, yeah, right, do that. Yeah, okay, that, okay, yeah, well, that line, and then leave space, and then, okay, Joe, okay. And that was it, for the next month. That's about as much direction as I got,
He liked to let you incubate that probably and formulate it and do your own creativity, which is dynamite because
Exactly.
how many artists allow you to do that
No,
these days,
and
right?
have that freedom
Right.
to like explore in the moment with the people you're playing.
Yeah.
What a fascinating idea. I mean, that's all music is anyway, in the moment, and
It is. I mean, you work as much as you possibly can to know the foundation, but then you never know what's going to happen from one tune to another, and you have to
Exactly.
rely on everything that you know
exactly.
in order to be creative and also keep everything together.
Right.
Right.
Right. You have to know some rules of the road,
Mhm.
and then rely on your instinct, your definition of instinct. Learn learned knowledge and whatever else there is.
Yeah.
To make the music as good as you can.
Mm-hmm. So when you're touring with him and then you come back, did you go right on the road with Roy Hargrove? Was that like in the mid-90s or something, or was that?
Well, Roy, I didn't really go on the road with Roy. We just played that, like a few things
Okay.
in Japan,
Okay.
like that, and a few things here and there.
Mhm.
So Joe was mainly that for me. When that ended, then came back and did a lot of things here. Then there was Nancy Wilson and Joe Williams, and they called me. And they were working for the same manager, so I don't know if Joe came first or Nancy, but Nancy, I toured with her too, went back to Japan and a lot of places all
that
over
had to
here.
be a huge tour with
It was
Nancy
huge.
Wilson, right?
It was
I mean,
amazing.
yeah.
Yeah. And John B. Williams was doing the Arsenio Hall show. So I got called, I was playing with at the time it was called the Members Jazz Orchestra.
Right.
Now it's the Chicago
Jazz Orchestra.
Yes, Jeff Lindbergh
Yeah.
and that. So we were at Orchestra Hall at the time. It was called that, Symphony Center, and we played with the big band. And I was playing, and she turned around because I was playing, and she was like, "Who's that on bass?" And I was flattered, and then I got the call.
Wow.
And then I worked with Joe too.
Did you work with her off and on throughout the years too? Yeah.
Yeah, and Joe Williams too.
Yeah.
So I was on the road with her for a while, then Joe for a while, Williams.
Mhm.
You know.
So you're touring with Nancy, you're touring with Joe, but you're still calling Chicago your home, so you're in and out of town a lot. I mean, when did you feel like all of a sudden you got your foothold in Chicago? I know that you're teaching now too. I mean, you're obviously everybody that comes through town. You're playing with here and there, as they have to have local bands, and I know you're traveling still and doing a lot of that stuff too. But you're
Right.
also, what's your official title at Roosevelt University and at NIU? Is it instructor of bass or jazz bass?
Well, at NIU, I coordinate the jazz combo
Okay.
program, and I am, I don't know, lecturer, jazz
Sounds
bass,
official. That sounds
you know,
official. Yeah.
something like that.
Mhm.
Roosevelt, I'm applied artist, and I did work with a combo. Occasionally, I work with their combos if they need me to,
Yeah.
as well. But mostly students there.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
So-
that's got to be one of those things. I think is it Roosevelt? They have like different kinds of combos too,
Correct.
right? They have like, what do they? They even have like a hip hop combo
Right.
or a fusion combo and a straight ahead jazz combo and
a
stuff.
free combo.
And a free
right.
combo.
jazz. Yep.
Do you find, because of all your experiences and stuff, the way the jazz studies programs, or especially at Roosevelt, I mean, to me, just looking from, the macro view of it, it really is hitting on all of the different styles of music that a jazz musician actually has to tackle these days, because it's not just like 50 years ago where you just sit down and, okay, now we're playing, I'm in a bebop group and this is what I'm doing. I mean, as a bass player and as a drummer and as any other instrumental, you get on a gig, you might be playing, it might be in the jazz context, but you're playing some hip-hop grooves, you're playing this, you're playing that, you're playing this and playing that, because all of it is kind of part of jazz. So you find like the jazz studies programs are a little bit like growing out organically as far as what's happening around the scene, and it's really like giving the students such an overhaul.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
I mean, the truth is that I never really played any one particular, that maybe I was typecast more as I was playing in a certain city, or particular because that kind of music worked more.
Okay.
But at U of I was in a free group called the Translucent Whales.
That's a cool name,
right?
man.
I was in a group called Jack Webb that was 20s music with Ron Dewar and all those cats playing that, slapping the bass. Then I was in a bebop or whatever came up,
right?
Learning that, or Chicoria, or Herbie Hancock, or maybe hip hop wasn't quite then
back then, but now,
so there's more to learn. Still learning the roots of the music, somewhat of the history, so that people have fundamentals. I think is pretty important, and. But also we want to go further and create something new.
Right.
So how do we do that? And how do we get them to use their instincts and go past with the knowledge of, the history of the music and go past that. And when you also, and I know I'm skipping around, when you think about the content of jazz, if we have that name for it, it really is a fusion of many kinds of music, Irish.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, it's got the straight duple and the triplet. And all of that combines to form this music, when you listen to it. The marching music, the Polish, everything is in there. Art Blakey, he's playing he would never play the real bossa nova, but he had his own feel. Like think Nika's Dream. I mean, which is like, who plays that feel?
Right.
He came up with that.
Right.
It's such a fusion of different kinds of music.
Have you gotten to a point you're playing because you've been doing it for so long that, like for an example, like when I was starting out, I was always worried, okay, this is take a bossa nova for example, it's a 3-2 or a 2-3 clave. This is it. This is the way I have to do it. This is the only way to do it. This is, now I don't care. As long as it feels good, I care less. Who cares? But are you at a point now in your playing where you're like, this is my voice. This feels great to me. This is what I want it to sound like, just because it's normally, this is how it is. You don't really care if like so-and-so did it this way or this guy did it that way or this guy did. Feels great to me, and this is the way I'm doing it.
Well, no. I'm a little bit movable. Sorry. Yeah, sometimes I am. Especially, if it's my group or whatever. But I mean, as far as the claves and stuff, there's always stuff to learn.
Yeah.
And the other thing about the clave 2-3-3-2, then they have things where they mix them and they go back and forth, and it evolved too.
Yeah.
So I don't know that there's any particularly right way, and I think it has to do with the other musicians you're playing with.
Right.
Their expectations of maybe, hey, we're going to do this in this kind of way. We would like you to do that too. I'm definitely going to try and do that. I'm going to sound like me anyway. I'm not going to sound like
Do you think it's harder to sound? Do you think it's harder to sound on a bass player, find your own voice as opposed to other instruments?
I think it's just hard to find your own voice. Period.
Yeah.
In some ways. Yeah. I don't know.
It's super difficult to find your own voice, but to me, like as a bassist, I just wonder if that's something that's like, man, at least with like drums, cymbal patterns and things like that, and touch and all that stuff. I know there's still a touch and stuff on bass, but I'm just wondering if there's a more difficult thing, or you probably don't think about it that way, right?
No, I do.
Yeah?
I do. Yeah, you got to think about what kind of tone you want, what kind of strings will help get that tone. The tone can come from you too. Like if Ray Brown, for instance, plays my bass, he's going to sound like Ray Brown. Sorry, and he was a mentor of mine and also a huge influence. So, when I would hear him, I go, Ray, that's not your regular bass. Yeah, I rented it. Or I was trying this plywood bass, and I was like, oh, that's the reason your tone, I'm thinking is different, but you're still Ray.
Right.
I mean, I could close my eyes and walk in the place and know it was Ray.
Right.
You know, but by the way he played, the articulation, by the notes he played, by his phrasing, all those, can combine. And so I think that every musician on any instrument goes through the same thing. Mm-hmm. If you're interested in evolving into whatever you are.
Right. Well, and that's the whole goal.
Right.
That's the whole goal, and that's
Yeah.
bringing it all the way back. Check out this transition,
Woo-hoo!
Marlene. Check it out. All
Okay,
right, bringing it
here
all
we
the way
go.
back. Your gig on January 31st.
Yes.
Bill Evans.
Bill
Talk about a
Evans.
guy with his own voice. So that's going to be at
Absolutely.
Winters Jazz Club.
Correct.
January 31st. Winters, of course, I should put this in there too.
Please.
465 McClure Court, Chicago. It's a great listening room. I know everybody that
Absolutely.
watches this show regularly has heard me talk about it. It's a very intimate room. Perfect for a Bill Evans tribute concert because it's just, you're close, you're right on top of the band. You're going to hear every little nuance of the group. So all the information.
You're frightening me. Every little nuance.
Now you're like, oh God, this was a mistake.
No.
So wintersjazzclub.com. There's tickets, shows 7:30 p.m. and 9:30 p.m. on January 31st. And then you have another show coming up February 12th.
Correct.
Which you're working out, basically trying to do this thing once a month. And it's the Marlene Rosenberg Quartet.
Correct.
That's a very original name.
I know. I call it MRQ every now and then in keeping with
Actually,
acronyms.
look at that.
MRQ,
Look at that.
Marlene Rosenberg Quartet.
And that's got Reggie Thomas on piano, Jeff Bradfield on saxophone, and Greg Atry on drums. Archery. I knew I was going to screw that up because I didn't put the other R in. Archery, sorry, Greg. On drums. And that's at the Jazz Showcase, 806 South Plymouth Court. And this is going to be probably focused more along the lines of your specific music, right? I mean, you're probably playing some originals,
Correct.
playing some different things like that.
Right. And I have a new CD that's going to come out hopefully in April. And,
talk a little bit about that.
And
MLK.
so MLK and Marlene, Lewis, and Kenny. So it's me, Lewis Nash, Kenny Barron, and then Christian McBride and I play some duos. And
oh wow!
Yeah, it's frightening, but he's just such a monster. They all are, actually. So I'm very honored that they were on my project. MLK obviously stands for Martin Luther King Jr. too. Mm-hmm. The social injustices that we are still having to deal with, that have really come to light these days. And Chicago is really struggling. Such a great city,
It is. It is.
And I have seen the transition where everybody might be afraid to go to the South Side when I was here in the 80s, but I wasn't really.
Right.
I mean, with a good sense of fear, but not. But now, a lot of those clubs have become with these guns, without sitting on, a perch talking about it. But a lot of clubs have closed. A lot of people,
there used to be a ton of clubs that, I mean, I remember going to on the South Side.
New Apartment Lounge.
Yeah.
All down 70s,
Alexander's.
87. Yeah.
Alexander's, right? I mean, all
Everything.
those places. Those are, I don't think any of. I know Apartment. I don't think Alexander's is there anymore. I think there's a couple other ones too. They're all gone.
Okay.
And I couldn't even imagine anybody reopening them. How are they going to get people there? So that's a whole issue that they have to take on.
Right.
And so this album kind of has a dual thing because you've got the group, but then also it's got that other significance to it, right?
So I wrote music in reference to these kinds of things.
Yeah.
And I'm very excited about it. We got the last piece we're going to record. It's going to be a little spoken word over something that is already recorded.
Yeah.
And
cool.
I'm excited about that with Tom Burrell, who's a famous and fantastic person in the ad industry, who is now retired. However, he really established in the African American community some positive images in advertising.
Yeah.
And so he's come on board, thankfully,
Oh,
and
that's
nice,
great.
to do this little piece with us.
So
And
you're
then-
thinking about this coming out sometime in April, most likely,
most likely.
on Origin.
Most likely.
Most likely.
Looks like
That's
there's
awesome.
a lot of most
I know
likely.
everything's in flux right now. I
there's
know how
some
this whole
flux,
thing
and
goes,
I'm
but
probably going to do a 3-week rush campaign for post-production funds. So
well, we'll keep you all posted
Yeah,
on that
right,
too.
right, of course.
But all right, so watch for that. MarleneRosenberg.com.
Yep.
Yeah, no, MarleneMusic.com.
Well, either one will work.
Oh, MarleneRosenberg.com
Yeah.
or MarleneMusic.com.
Correct.
Right, so for all the information, she plays all the time as well. So we're talking about 2 shows, but be sure to check out her schedule there. And also April, the new release coming out. We'll talk again as that comes out.
Sure.
We'll do something about
Great,
that. Make
thanks.
sure everybody knows about
Thank
that.
you.
But of course, January 31st, Winters Jazz Club, Jazz Showcase February 12th. You've got plenty of opportunities to go check this out. And I mean, hopefully, talking to Marlene, you guys have seen her play, but now you know the fascinating story behind Marlene. And you can go in, and if you have a clarinet, I'm sure she'll be happy to talk to you about that too. I'm just kidding.
If I can remember some of the fingerings. Each octave's different.
So I learned how to play flute when I had to when I was a music ed major
sure.
for 2 months.
Sure, how'd that
and I
go?
decided, well, I was only a music ed major for 2 months. That's how
that,
well it
no,
went.
that's how it went.
That's how well it went. All right, so as I always say, hopefully Marlene and I see you at one of her upcoming gigs, and if we don't,
Come out.
hopefully we will see you somewhere out on the scene.